Ready to unlock some serious goal-crushing power.
I like where this is going.
Today, we're diving deep into discipline.
Love it.
Our source, a YouTube video, How to Build Self-Discipline, from Get This, Learn English podcast.
Okay, an English learning podcast talking about discipline.
Exactly, but don't click away just yet.
All right, you've got my attention.
This video, it's packed with universal truths about discipline. Seriously, stuff that applies to everyone, no matter what your goals are. We're talking achieving anything you set your mind to.
I'm intrigued.
So consider this deep dive your cheat sheet.
2.
To understanding what discipline really is, why it matters, and the big one, how to actually make it work for you in real life, not just theory.
Practical advice, I'm in. Let's do it.
Now, the video kicks off with a story about someone losing a ton of weight in just 6 months, all thanks to, you guessed it, discipline.
Wow, 6 months. That's impressive.
Right. But then it gets real. They talk about that struggle we all face. You know, setting a goal like working out every day, starting strong, and then bam, life happens.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
Suddenly, the excuses start piling up and we're back to square one, slipping back into old habits. Ugh, tell me you've been there too.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a universal experience, right? That wanting to move forward but feeling stuck.
It is. But what's fascinating is that this video, it doesn't just focus on weight loss. It shows how discipline can impact any area of your life. Learning a skill, starting a business, even just being more present with your loved ones.
So discipline is like this master key that unlocks action.
It's like the bridge between thinking about something and actually doing it. I like that, the master key.
Right. And the video actually gives a clear definition. They say discipline is the ability to control your actions and stay focused on your goals, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. Okay, that sounds simple, but I feel like there's more to it. What do they mean by that?
Right. It's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate, right?
That's what I'm thinking. It can't just be about self-denial.
You're on the right track. Discipline, it's not about rigid rules or some kind of mental boot camp. It's about making choices, choices that match up with your values, your long-term dreams. It's understanding the why behind what you're doing and using that to fuel your actions even when things get tough.
So it's more about making choices that support the person you want to become, not depriving yourself.
Exactly. Choosing long-term fulfillment over those quick hits of gratification. And the cool part is, discipline, it creates this ripple effect.
A ripple effect. Okay, now I'm really curious.
Think of it like this. You're trying to build a new habit, like running every morning.
Okay, I'm with you.
The first few days, they might be brutal. You hit snooze, you come up with excuses. But if you push through, if you stick with it, something incredible happens.
What? Tell me.
Those small, consistent actions, they gain momentum. You start seeing results, you feel better, and that fuels your motivation even more.
So it's like a positive feedback loop. It keeps building on itself.
Exactly. The more you practice discipline, the easier it gets. And the more you want to keep going, small wins lead to bigger wins. And over time, discipline, it's not just about willpower anymore.
It becomes something else.
It becomes about self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy. Now, that's a word I haven't heard in a while. Remind me what that means.
Basically, it's your belief in your own power to get things done. As you rack up those wins, your confidence grows. And that makes you even more likely to tackle bigger and bigger challenges.
I like it. So we're not just talking about discipline here. We're talking about building unshakable belief in itself.
Exactly. And this brings us to a classic study on discipline, the Stanford marshmallow test.
Oh, yeah. The marshmallow test. I've heard of this. Isn't it where they give a kid a marshmallow and tell them they can eat it now or wait it too later?
That's the one, the ultimate test of patience.
Seriously, though, what does this have to do with discipline?
What's fascinating is what it revealed about delayed gratification, that ability to wait. It's a core part of discipline. And the researchers, they found a strong link between the kids who waited for that second marshmallow and their success later in life.
Wait, hold on. They could predict success based on whether a kid could resist a marshmallow? That's wild.
I know, right? It sounds crazy, but it's true. The kids who could delay gratification, those who waited, they tended to do better in school, had stronger social skills, even better health outcomes as adults.
That's incredible. Makes you think, are we all taking mini marshmallow tests every day with the choices we make?
It really does, and every time we choose the long-term goal over that instant gratification, we're flexing our discipline muscles and potentially setting ourselves up for some serious success down the road.
I love it. So delaying gratification, even in small things, it's like a superpower.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
So we know discipline is key, but how do we actually build it? What are the practical steps?
Well, that's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll dive into next.
Can't wait. Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started. All right, so we've established discipline is like this secret sauce for success. But how do we actually bottle it up and use it? The video goes into some practical ways to cultivate discipline, especially when things get tough. I mean, it's not always rainbows and butterflies, right?
Right. It's a journey, not a destination. And there are definitely going to be bumps along the way.
Exactly. It's easy to stay motivated when everything's going great. But the real test comes when we face those inevitable challenges. What about those moments when you just feel like giving up?
That's a great point. It's in those moments that true discipline shines.
The video mentioned something about overcoming challenges. How do we actually push through them?
Yeah, they shared this really inspiring story about a student who was struggling to study for a huge exam. He felt totally overwhelmed by all the material, kept getting distracted. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that feeling of wanting to procrastinate when a task just seems too big.
Oh, 100%. There are definitely times when I'm staring at a textbook and suddenly cleaning my entire house seems like a better idea.
It's so tempting to give in to those distractions, but what's interesting is how this student actually overcame them. He didn't let the size of the task paralyze him. Instead, he broke it down.
Broke it down, like into smaller chunks.
Exactly. Instead of trying to climb Mount Everest in one go, he focused on setting up base camp first.
Makes sense. Small steps, so instead of one giant leap, it's a series of manageable steps.
Exactly. And he actually created a schedule, set specific times each day for studying, even if it was just for 30 minutes.
Oh, I like that, a schedule. Structure. What else?
Oh, and he made sure to check things off as he completed them. You know, that feeling of accomplishment, it plays a big role.
Oh, yeah. Crossing things off my to-do list, one of the best feelings.
Our brains, they love rewards. Even finishing a small task, it releases dopamine, which basically reinforces the behavior. So by breaking down a big goal and celebrating those small wins, we're training our brains to crave that feeling of accomplishment.
That's so cool. It's like we're hacking our own brains to make discipline more enjoyable, turning it into a game.
Exactly. It's not a chore, it's a challenge we can win. And the video, they also stress focusing on the why behind your goals. That student, he kept reminding himself of his dream, his reasons for studying. It helped him stay motivated when he felt like quitting.
So it's about connecting with that deeper purpose, having a driving force.
Precisely. It's fuel for those tough moments. When you're facing resistance, that why becomes your compass.
I love that. Your guiding star. Okay, but let's be real. We're human. We're going to slip up sometimes. What about those setbacks? How do we handle those?
It's all about how we respond, right?
I guess so. Do we just pick ourselves up and try again?
Yeah, the video emphasizes that it's okay to stumble. Discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about progress.
So we learn from those slip-ups and get back on track.
Exactly. Instead of beating yourself up, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Adjust your approach. Avoid making the same mistake twice. Each setback, it's an opportunity for growth.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. It takes the pressure off. So start small, learn, and keep going.
Right. You don't have to become a productivity master overnight. Pick one small habit and focus on that. They use the example of committing to reading for just 10 minutes each day.
10 minutes. That feels doable. Could you commit to that?
Most people could, and that's the point. It's about making discipline accessible. You build one habit, then add another and another. You're gradually building that discipline muscle, just like working out at the gym.
So building a discipline staircase, one step at a time. I like it. But how do we make those habits stick? The video mentioned routines.
Routines. They're incredibly powerful. They create structure. They automate those healthy choices.
Can you give me an example?
Well, imagine if you had to consciously decide to brush your teeth every morning. It would be a disaster.
I can only imagine. I'd probably forget half the time.
Exactly. But we brush our teeth without thinking about it, right? It's ingrained in our routine. And it's the same with other healthy habits. We make them automatic.
I'm starting to see how this all connects. So if I wanted to make that 10 minutes of reading a habit, I might do it right before bed every night. Make it part of my routine.
That's a great idea. By connecting the habit to something you already do, you increase your chances of sticking with it. And, there are also tools that can help, like habit tracking apps or just a simple calendar.
Okay, so lots of resources out there to support our discipline journey. Routines, check. But we can't talk about discipline without talking about motivation. How does that fit in?
Right. Motivation is key. But the thing is, it can be so fickle.
I know what you mean. Some days I feel unstoppable, other days I just want to stay in bed.
Exactly. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline, that's your anchor.
Anchor in the storm, I like that.
It keeps you steady even when your motivation dips. It's that voice inside that says, remember your why, keep going, even if it's just one small step.
It's like having a reliable friend who's always there to support you.
Exactly. And, setting clear, achievable goals, rewarding yourself for those milestones, it all helps too.
Definitely. Celebrating those wins along the way is so important. But how do we find that sweet spot? Challenging ourselves without setting ourselves up for failure.
It's all about balance, understanding your own limits and strengths. Maybe start by asking, what's one step I can take today that feels challenging but achievable?
Love that. Challenge and achieve. So routines, motivation, handling setbacks, we've covered a lot. But there's one more thing the video dives into that I want to explore. Self-care.
Self-care, yeah.
It seems a bit counterintuitive. We're talking about discipline, pushing ourselves. How does self-care fit in?
It's not what you'd expect, right? We tend to think discipline means pushing ourselves to the limit, working nonstop, sacrificing rest.
Yeah, no pain, no gain. That's the old saying.
But that can actually backfire. Big time.
Seriously. You mean taking breaks is actually important for discipline?
More than important, it's essential. The video shares stories about people pushing too hard, neglecting their well-being, thinking that was the path to success.
Oh, I've been there. Burning candle at both ends.
Exactly. Burnout is a real thing, and it can manifest in so many ways: exhaustion, lack of interest, anxiety, even physical symptoms.
So our bodies basically give us warning signs, like red flags.
Exactly. It's crucial to pay attention. Exhaustion, trouble sleeping, anxiety, irritability, physical symptoms like headaches, these are all signs to slow down.
Okay, so our bodies tell us, but how do we actually know when to take a break?
Learning to listen to your body is key. If you're seeing those red flags, it's time to step back, reevaluate, make changes.
What kind of changes? Like, what would that look like?
It could be adjusting your schedule, creating more downtime, delegating tasks, setting more realistic goals, or even just adding more things you enjoy into your day.
So it's about finding that balance between pushing forward and taking care of ourselves.
Exactly. Self-care isn't selfish. It's essential for maintaining your well-being. And ultimately, it fuels your discipline.
It's like setting ourselves up for success instead of setting ourselves up for burnout.
I like that. Setting ourselves up for success. And it brings us back to that idea of progress over perfection. Discipline isn't about never messing up. It's about steady progress.
Showing up consistently even when it's tough.
Exactly. Celebrate those small wins, learn from everything, and keep moving forward.
It's a journey, not a splint. Embrace the process.
Right. And remember, discipline is a skill. It gets easier with practice. The more we flex those muscles, the stronger they become.
I'm feeling so much more motivated now. Like, discipline is actually achievable, not this superhuman thing.
It absolutely is achievable. Approach it with patience, kindness to yourself, and a willingness to keep learning and growing.
Great advice. Now, I'm curious, are there any specific techniques you use to stay disciplined? Anything that's worked well for you?
You know, one technique I find super helpful is the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of it?
Pomodoro technique? Yeah, I've heard of it. Isn't it all about breaking down your work into intervals?
That's the one. You break your work into intervals, usually about 25 minutes long with short breaks in between.
I think there's an app for that too, right?
Tons of apps, but you can also just use a typer. The main thing is committing to working on one task for that 25 minutes without distractions. Then you take a break, stretch, walk around, grab some water.
Okay, so built-in breaks. And it helps train our attention spans, right?
Exactly. It's so easy to get distracted these days with emails and notifications popping up constantly. This helps you regain control of your focus.
So we work with more intention. I love it. What a great way to boost productivity and avoid feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's just one example. There's so many tools and techniques out there. It's all about finding what works for you.
Experimenting and personalizing our approach. It's not one size fits all.
Exactly. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what clicks for you.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm feeling inspired and ready to tackle my goals with a fresh perspective.
I'm glad to hear that. Just remember, be patient with yourself, celebrate those wins, and never underestimate the power of small, consistent actions.
Amazing advice. So we've talked about building discipline, facing challenges, and the importance of self-care. What else does this video cover? Anything we haven't touched on yet?
You know, they actually talk about this really interesting idea of balancing our efforts with ease, finding that sweet spot between pushing ourselves and knowing when to let go.
That sounds fascinating. Tell me more.
Well, that's what we'll dive into in the final part of our deep dive. We'll uncover some valuable insights on how to bring more ease and balance into our journey with discipline.
Welcome back. We're wrapping up our deep dive on discipline. We've covered so much already. Small steps, routines, self-care. It's all connected.
It really is. And now we're going to explore something that might seem a bit unexpected: finding ease within discipline.
Ease. Wait, I thought discipline was all about pushing ourselves, striving, always being on.
That's what we often think, right? But the video makes a great point. What if we could be disciplined while also embracing a sense of flow?
Disciplined but not constantly grinding. Is that even possible?
That's the question, isn't it? The video uses this analogy of discipline being like a muscle. To get stronger, we need to challenge our muscles. But we also need rest, recovery.
Oh, I see where you're going with this. It's not about being on 20/47. It's about finding a rhythm, effort, and ease.
You got it. It's like learning to dance with discipline, finding that sweet spot where we're challenged but not overwhelmed, making progress without burning ourselves out.
I like that. Dancing with discipline makes it feel less rigid, more like a practice.
Exactly. And they emphasize that rest and self-care, they're not rewards for hard work. They're essential parts of the journey.
It's like we said before, self-care is fuel, not a luxury.
Right. And they share stories about times when they pushed too hard, thinking that was the only way, but they ended up burned out.
Yeah, neglecting self-care doesn't really work in the long run. We're not machines. We need to recharge.
We do. And when we listen to our bodies, when we prioritize well-being, we actually create the conditions for sustainable discipline.
The kind to help us reach our goals without sacrificing our health or happiness. Okay, but how do we know when we're pushing too hard? Are there any warning signs?
Good question. The video talks about some key indicators of burnout: exhaustion, trouble sleeping, increased anxiety, irritability, losing interest in things you used to enjoy.
Oh, wow. So it can show up in a lot of ways. It's not just physical exhaustion.
Right. And don't forget about those physical symptoms: headaches, digestive issues, those can be signs too.
Okay, our bodies send us signals. But how do we actually know when to take a break? It's easier said than done sometimes.
It is. It's about learning to listen to those signals. If you're noticing those signs, it's time to pause, reevaluate, adjust.
Adjust how? Like, what kind of changes should we make?
Could be anything: creating more downtime in your schedule, delegating tasks, setting more realistic expectations, or even just adding activities you love into your day.
So it's about finding that balance between striving and letting go.
I love that. Striving and letting go. It's a dance, figuring out when to push and when to rest.
We keep coming back to that dance analogy. I like it. It feels fluid, not so black and white.
It is fluid, and the video reminds us that finding this balance, it's an ongoing process. We're going to get it right sometimes and stumble other times.
We're human after all. It's a journey.
It is, and the key is to be kind to ourselves through the process, to learn, to adapt.
To embrace the imperfections. And that brings us back to progress over perfection. It's not about being flawless. It's about showing up and moving forward.
Exactly. Celebrate those small wins and remember that every step, even the missteps, are part of the process.
It's all part of the learning. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one last piece of wisdom you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I'd ask everyone to consider this. What's one small action you can take today to bring more discipline into an area of your life that matters to you? Remember, even the tiniest step can create a ripple effect.
Love that. Small steps, big impact. Well, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the power of discipline. Hopefully you're feeling inspired to embark on your own journey with a renewed sense of purpose and ease. Don't forget the ease.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.